Hey, chiropractors, welcome to Modern Chiropractic Mastery with your host, Dr. Kevin Christie, where we discuss the latest in marketing, business, and professional growth with some of the leading experts in the industry. Welcome to another episode of Modern Chiropractic Mastery. This is your host, Dr. Kevin Christie, and today I've got an exciting interview with Dr. Brandon Steele of ChiroUP. We're going to dive into a lot of things about the profession. Where's it going? What are some of the things on the horizon as a profession? And interestingly enough, I recorded this episode before we found out the news. I recorded this introduction afterwards. I do that after I record the actual interview. And between then and now, we just found out that the University of Pittsburgh has a DC program starting in 2025. I'm sure a lot of you have heard that by now, but maybe not. This is the first time you're hearing it. It's really big news. First public university in the United States for a chiropractic program. Definitely really, really good for a lot of different reasons. And it was exciting to see a lot of the hard work that were put in by people like Dr. Michael Schneider. And I know, having the PSP program there was from Dr. Murphy, who was on the podcast, was a big step in getting this going. And it's just really cool. I recommend reading up into that and some of the details of the program. Looks interesting, looks shorter than what you and I probably went through. I think it's 2.5 years instead of 3.5 or 3 1/3 years, I think it might be. And so, but exciting times and something that's a big step for our profession. And in this interview with Dr. Steele, we dive into other aspects of the profession and what we're seeing and what he's seeing. He definitely gets a great insight into the profession, and he's just a wealth of knowledge, and it's always good to have him on the podcast. I think this was the second time. Last time was maybe a few years ago. And on that note, we're actually pulling up in April will be our 7-year anniversary of this podcast every week. And so it's getting harder to remember when I had a guest on. Was it 2 years ago or 5 years ago, right? Just had someone reach out to me who was a guest on probably within the first 10 episodes. So this would have been in 2017, say that he got a new client from one of our listeners who must have gone to the back catalog and did that. So look at the back catalog, a lot of good episodes for sure. Speaking of kind of the back catalog too, and on a more somber note, someone I got to know from the podcast, and then I had him as our guest presenter in January of 2023, so a little over a year ago in our mastermind group down in Fort Lauderdale. Dr. Ray Tuck, unfortunately, has passed away. I think some of you had saw that. He's just someone that the term dynamic really, really explains who he was, and he was dynamic in many ways, and he was dynamic in life, dynamic for the profession, fun to be around, wealth of knowledge, and definitely gone too soon. So my condolences to his family. That's a big loss for everybody. And so definitely tough to hear the news. And he did a lot more in his shorter life than many do in a full life. All right, without further ado, here is my interview with Dr. Brandon Steele. Before we get to today's show, I'm excited to tell you about a great product that will help your patients find quicker relief and help you get better outcomes. Stop Pain Clinical is a great way to provide a safe, effective pain relief alternative to NSAIDs and opioids while you diagnose and treat the underlying cause. It works on contact to provide fast, long-lasting pain relief from sprains, strains, bruises, arthritis, muscle aches, joint and back pain. How does it do that? Stop Pain Clinical has 10% menthol plus MSM and glucosamine. Great for joint pain. It is formulated with penetration enhancers and skin conditioners, so it works fast, feels great, and it is sweat resistant. And also the spray is awesome with kinesiology tape, so your athletes will love it. You can just spray that right on before you put the tape. Phenomenal combination. They also have this great new migraine and headache relief topical. I know I've been using it. My wife's been using it. You place a little bit of the cream right onto that deep occipital as the base of the skull. Really helps give you some relief from that unrelenting headache and migraine. So great for your patients. You can learn more about Stop Pain Clinical at stopa.com stop.in/MCM, and you get a free intro pack of Stop Pain Clinical products. Again, that's stopa.in/MCM. Great news too is Stop Pain Clinical topical analgesics are available exclusively through chiropractors and other healthcare professionals. So they have another great reason to visit you and tell their friends. All right, Brandon, excited to have you on the show again. I think it's the second time, and it's always a pleasure to run into you and chat. I think we'll be in Parker, Vegas this year, and so hopefully we'll have a drink together. But before we do that, we'll dive into a good topic. Every so often, I love having chiropractors on here that are both in the trenches, but also, really doing a lot for the profession. And you get a really good beat of where things are. And so we'll dive into that kind of an update show a little bit on where we're heading as a profession. But before we do that, tell us about yourself personally and professionally.
Thanks for having me on again. I think it's been a couple years, and in the trenches is where I've been. I think that's where a lot of us live, kind of the grind of
Mhm.
managing a practice, and then also a family is always fun. And yeah, still working with ChiroUP, still working on private practice, and not mastering any of them, but working hard to get better each day.
Yeah, that's I had Mark King on about a month ago, and I asked him like, at what age did you feel like you really were in the swing of things? He's in his early 60s now, and it was like 45 or 46, and I was like, oh, well, at least you had it figured out by then, because I'm still trying to figure it out. But to hear someone like him say, it took about 20 years, it's not wrong.
I think that first off, I love Mark. In fact, I've told him this many times, and him and Brett Winchester going to MPI seminars, but they're the reason I'm still in the profession. So
Mhm.
eternally grateful for whatever they're doing. There's only a couple people that if they're jumping off a bridge, you wouldn't even see what happened. You just jump off with them because they're making the right decision, and they're two of them. But yeah, I know what you mean. And I think that one of the biggest turnarounds in my life was when I would walk out of my treatment room and I would not outwardly, but I would actually kind of look and like, oh, is there another chart there? Because the first 15 years, like you're
Mhm.
praying there's another chart there that you can, see the next patient. And then as you start to get busier, you're kind of like, oh, I really could just use a couple of minutes to have a cup of coffee. And I think I've hit that point
Mhm.
as far as, fortunately building my practice up enough. But then you hit the next point of, man, I'm just sitting here trading time for money. How can I pour a little fuel on this and scale the practice? So I think I'm at that stage. I don't know what stage that's called though.
Yeah, that's cool. And how are you balancing your time now? How many days a week are you in the practice treating patients?
Uh, uh, there's no balance there. I
Yeah.
see I'm about 12 hours a day, Monday, Wednesday, and seeing patients,
Yep.
and then a half day Friday.
Mhm.
If I could do that 5 days a week, I really would. I love that aspect of what I do.
Yeah.
Um, but just like we were talking about before the show started, I'm getting older. I'm in my 40s
Mhm.
now. Things are starting to you feel it a little bit more. So
Mm.
that's a good cadence for me right now. And then the rest of the
Mhm.
times with ChiroUp or being an Uber for my three kids.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, we're going to dive into a few things today, but I wanted to really get your assessment. What's going on with the profession? Where are we going? It's 2024. A lot of things in the healthcare arena. Obviously, there's a lot of things with technology and just our interprofessional things that are going on. But what's your assessment of it right now?
That's a good question. I practice with Tim Burlesman, and we have another associate with us. So we're very good at assessing what's going on in our four walls, but that's not what's really happening around, the US and really the world. So we do a lot of surveys.
Mhm.
And 2021, I believe we ran our first survey, just trying to figure out what's happening with the modern chiropractic practice.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because the things that I think are true, or maybe we learned in school were true, are not necessarily what's happening now. That we're seeing a lot more multidisciplinary practice. We have a couple hospital systems that use us. Well, I take that back. So, how many offices, in your opinion, Kevin,
Mhm.
are single offices versus they have multiple offices?
Mhm.
Um, are they usually single, or do most chiropractic practice have multiples?
Usually single, and there definitely are some with multiples, but definitely you're seeing mostly single offices.
And then how many
Mm.
chiropractors are in a single office?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's often one. We see a good amount of partners, like husband, wife, and things of that nature. Um, and then you'll sometimes also see partners that were like, buddies from school, but often it's one. And then if they do things right over time, they get to a practice like how yours is, or typically how mine is, where there's multiple providers.
Yeah, we ran that survey. I think there was about 400 responses. So it's not that big. That's
Yeah.
not, maybe indicative of the entire population, but it was 1.8. So obviously there's not a point 0.8 of providers, but between one and
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
What's the most expensive software that someone runs in their office?
EHR.
Yeah. What's the most expensive piece of their overhead?
If not payroll, rent, but probably payroll.
Payroll.
Yeah.
And then I got this one wrong.
Mm.
Majority of income is it cash or insurance?
But I think a lot, and I'm trying to think because you probably assessed ChiroUP users.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting because we have so many of our clients are ChiroUP users, and it's just such a symbiotic relationship. And a lot of them are going cash these days. But I wouldn't know the number.
I would have gone with you. I really would have.
Yeah.
I said, well, it was the collections, So part of that
Mhm.
cash is the co-insurance copay.
Yep.
But most of their income was through insurance. And I actually would have sided with you. But yeah, we kind of learned that it's usually one or two providers in one
Mhm.
office. People really are, their biggest expense is that EMR. And I think the most prevalent comment was, that they are having trouble collecting the money as far as
Yeah.
billing and finding people to do those things. So um, just like we always do, we try to find the problem and then try to fix it. So really trying to find a way to scale people's practice by standardizing what they do, finding a way to, you can reduce costs of EMRs, but really
Mhm.
for myself, trying to find a way to increase the value of that EMR within the
Yeah.
office. And then finding a way to do, billing clearinghouses and integrations are kind of what we focused on for the last couple of years, because that's the cost of overhead is getting obnoxious. I mean, I think I just saw your email that came out, maybe it was today or a couple of days, about having virtual employees.
Yep.
That's
Mhm.
that's big. I mean, what kind of trends are you seeing in the office these days besides those things?
Yeah, that's a big one actually. In our mastermind group, we had a specialist come in. That would have been November of 2022 on virtual assistants, and then one of our members didn't. We do these each one teach ones, where in our mastermind, members will do a 30-minute presentation on something that's really transformed their practice. And Vanessa in our mastermind, she had talked about the VAs, and she's got like five now, and they've got a really busy practice here in Florida. They do a good amount of personal injury and other things, but the VA is really like kind of going to your point. People's payrolls have gotten so high, they've been able to mitigate that a little bit with virtual assistants, and then offload some of the things that a person in-house would do, free them up to be able to focus on the patient that's physically there. And so one of the big trends I'm seeing is definitely virtual assistants is a big part of that. We're also seeing that in the front desk, but also not even just the front desk. It is definitely a trend there. I would say another trend that we're seeing is people, and it's not a good trend. People are not figuring out what an hourly capacity is for their doctor, right? Like how much revenue can one doctor bring in an hour? And that's going to be a time, like you mentioned earlier, time economy. It's going to be a time for dollars thing. And if you're deciding to spend 30 or 60 minutes with a patient, because we're seeing a lot of that trend, but they're trying to fit it in and pigeonhole it into an old chiropractic insurance model, or a chiropractic cash reimbursement model. And they're not able to make enough money per hour in revenue to then support the overhead that you talked about, and a team around that. So I'm trying my best to mitigate that part, but it's definitely a problem.
Yeah, I can give you how we do it, and I'm not saying
Mhm.
it's right. We work on points. So I have 8 points in an hour.
Hmm.
Now, here's the deal. If I saw a Medicare patient, that's 1 point. They're pretty
Hmm.
easy. If I have someone who's a new patient, they're 3 points. If I have someone who's a little bit of a talker, they could be 2 points or 3 points. And that way you can, I can see 8 Medicare patients an hour because I can automate
Yeah.
most of the stuff that I'm not getting paid to do by the minute.
Hmm.
But then the other people obviously take a little more points to try to fill those gaps. But you're right. I've got a guy who first started with us who could see 2 patients an hour, then was complaining he couldn't make enough money. I'm like, well, let's sit down with some gentle arithmetic and figure
Yeah.
this one out. And but we have to do that. We have to automate the things that we're not getting paid to do.
Yeah. Let's take a break from today's episode and announce our first sponsor. This is going to be Propel Marketing and Design. I've known Darcy Sullivan for years. We've worked hand in hand on my websites. I don't trust anybody else to do the search engine optimization. She does a great job. There's so much to it. A lot of the lingo and the words are beyond my comprehension, but it's just amazing work that she does. And if you're really going to get results with Google, you have to make sure your website is SEO optimized. And I really don't want you doing it yourself as a chiropractor. So you just have to have this type of stuff done. And if you're looking to get more organic online traffic that pulls in new patients, Propel Marketing and Design is currently offering chiropractors who listen to this podcast a free SEO website review. The free review will help you uncover methods that will improve your website and boost your search engine visibility. Head over to propelyourcompany.com/chiropractor and schedule your free SEO website review. You won't regret it. She gets great results. Your website needs this. Your search results need this. Head on over there to propelyourcompany.com/chiropractor to get your free SEO website review. And it's to your point on that is there's this mindset that we're in a time-based economy as a chiropractor, but we're really in a results-based economy.
Yeah.
And but there are some chiropractors that think that you can't get optimal results without the time. But I've had Brett Winchester on here talk about it, and he's on the Mount Rushmore of chiropractic at this point, and he's figured it out. And he talked about clinical efficiency and the ways of doing, and I really liked his model. People can listen to that episode. It was like from a couple years ago. But yeah, I love your thoughts on the automation, and that would be another trend. People are looking for the ways they can be more efficient and also cut some of that payroll and just overall overhead costs through automation.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the I work for I'm a part of the Illinois Chiropractic Society. The pay is awesome. If you're in association work, you understand that huge benefits.
I sense the
Yeah,
sarcasm.
it's laid pretty thick on that one, and I think it's very important. I think everybody should be part of their state association. I'm not
Yeah.
not not disparaging that. However, yeah, the biggest thing that I'll see with a failing practice is they
Mhm.
want to treat patients faster. I'm like, gosh, don't do that.
Yeah.
Evaluate faster, get to the
Mhm.
actual problem. And then, the standard of care for treating the musculoskeletal conditions we see, it's laid out. People want to make it some big, elaborate scheme to get someone out of plantar fasciitis. Just look at the
Mhm.
research. It's simple. As long as you have the right diagnosis, you're going to get to that, that treatment and the appropriate, time it takes for that tissue to heal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a key thing. And but I do believe one of the trends I'm seeing that's improving is chiropractors are looking for help a little bit more. That I think in the evidence-based crowd, there's been a stigma of practice management and coaching or mentors or being an associate for a period of time or self-teaching. I know some chiropractors have done a great job of gathering the right resources like ChiroUP and others and really implementing it. Not everybody's an implementer, and very few can self teach and implement. But a lot of people are starting to realize, like, okay, it's not the Mercedes 80s. We're not going to just roll in, stim, ice, and heat, and a little adjustment and get 125 bucks from Blue Cross. And there's going to be a $10 copay. Like those days are gone. Everybody knows that. And so I do think people are trying to find the way to make a professional living. And I think that's that's my ultimate goal for chiropractors we work with is, and I stole that term from Len Fay of MPI, old school Len Fay, about chiropractors should make a professional living, right? And I think that's what I want chiropractors to do. And it doesn't mean they have to, make 500,000 a year. That'd be great. I'd love for everybody to do that, but let's make a professional living. And that could be different if you're in San Francisco or if you're in, South Dakota.
Yeah, I won't disagree with that. And I do believe there's a touch of lack of humility sometimes when I talk with other kind of healthcare providers, but definitely with chiropractic, that we think what we're doing is right. And I'm not saying what we're doing isn't right. However, anyone can live in their own fairyland if their ego is big
Mhm.
enough. But there was a post on social media, and whenever posts get a lot of likes, I'll read it. I'm not a big social media person, but there was someone who posted a picture of a fancy car
Mhm.
on social media, and here's how I did it. And everybody just berates him, and I'm like, I
Mhm.
kind of want to learn what this person is doing. And it's not that I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
However, we have to sometimes get a little uncomfortable and to figure out what other
Mhm.
people are doing. And then it's up to us to decide whether we're going to do it or not. One of the things we do in ChiroUp is the person who's getting the best results for any specific condition, we interview that provider. Hey, Dave Flap, what are you doing? You got the best results for plantar fasciitis. What do you tell your patient? What treatments do you provide? What educational exercises? What do you do for that patient?
Mhm.
Now, we have evidence on what we say or the literature says we should do for a patient. And now we have a little bit of an evidence-informed decision,
Mhm.
but it's still my decision on what to do. But the more we can kind of learn what gets the best results, it just gives us the more evidence to support what we're doing. And
Mhm.
chiros are really good at not wanting to like look at the evidence, but when you look at the evidence, as far as non-surgical, non-pharmacological care for MSK issues, it supports us. We
Yeah.
should be the ones reporting the evidence. So it's an interesting conundrum we have.
Yeah, I actually jumped on the soapbox on a intro to a podcast a couple weeks ago about that post you're talking about, and I think where that post may have gone wrong was just it almost seemed like it was all about the flashy money versus and I didn't have the time or have the time to write a comment on it, but I wanted to. So instead, I actually just spent like 4 minutes on an intro of our podcast to talk about it, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it. This was kind of where my take on it is because someone had posted in there that we are healers and healers first, and it's not about the money and things like that, and I get it. And where
Mhm.
I think let's call it the poverty mindset, which was essentially the gist of that post, I think where it troubles chiropractors, it's not about the Lambo or the three houses or whatever. It's more about some of these subtle things that the poverty mindset hinders chiropractors, and it could be in things like because you mentioned the evidence and all that. It's like they underdose their treatment plans because they're putting themselves in the buying decision for that insurance patient that has a deductible because it's January, it's not December, right? And so
Mhm.
they're saying, well, the evidence would show that for this case, I'd need to see them 3 times a week for 3 weeks and then maybe 2 times a week for a week or whatever. But I don't feel comfortable with that because Sally's her deductible just renewed, or she's got a $40 copay, or they're a cash patient. So they give different treatment plans based on the finances in a negative way, right? We all know that a lot of chiropractors have always given treatment plans on based on great insurance reimbursement back in the day, or like, oh, this patient's got great insurance and a low copay. Let's come in 5 days a week for the next 4 weeks. But on the other end, they're under treating and the results could suffer. And so if you're going to be a healer and you're really wanting to get the best patient outcomes, you have to be able to put the money outside of the equation of what your clinical recommendations are. And I think a lot of chiropractors are suffering from that. They're not billing for re-exams because of that. They're not billing for maybe extremity manipulations because it adds to it. If that insurance patient has a deductible, I think we're running into those situations. I think on the poverty mindset, and then secondly, um, they're they're afraid to reinvest money into growth of their professional lives, and that can be tricky as well. And so I think those are a couple things. The post could have been a little bit more around that, but I think it was also meant to get people's attention with a picture of a Lamborghini. But what are your thoughts on that kind of word vomit I just came out with?
Yeah, I actually had to start typing a little bit because there was a couple points that I want to make in there. And just like yourself, I have the opportunity and the privilege to go out and speak for people and to, spew out what I think is important.
Mhm,
And one of the things that I'll always say is, listen, if you're going to run a business, you have to have a business hand. If you
yeah,
don't, you're going to go out of business.
mhm,
However, you also have the clinical hand
yeah,
to get people out of pain. That's the product you're selling. And as long as your clinical hand is always above your business hand, you're going to do
mhm,
just fine. You're going to sleep well at night.
mhm,
With that being said, that society has a metric of success, and it's money.
mhm,
Money doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't, it's not a product, but it is a gauge of success. So the only people that are going to get offended by that post are the people who don't have a Lambo and want one.
yeah,
Now, the reason I say and want one is because I don't want a Lamborghini.
mhm,
That's what makes that person excited, and he's got us talking about him. So there's
yeah,
something to that too. But it's all on what drives you. So if that drives you and you're upset because you don't have one because you want
mhm,
one, then it's going to make you upset. The last point is that in the absence of clear communication, people make shit up. So in the absence of, clear understanding of how he got that or what he's doing in his practice, how he's billing people, we're always going to assume the worst. And in our
mhm,
profession, we always shoot inside versus, uh, to drive that. And I don't even know this person. So I know nothing about
yeah,
this person. But I was curious to the psychology of the question and the
mhm,
responses. With that being said, I want the same thing that you want.
mhm,
I want to see chiropractor as a profession succeed. And I think that we have certain limitations.
mhm,
And the number one limitation, before I say that, let me ask you a question.
yeah,
If you had to look at your biggest time suck, which we disagree, time is what we're trading for money. What was
yeah.
your biggest time suck in seeing patients?
Definitely the notes part that kills me because I enjoy the inner like I get in a flow state when I'm in with patients. It's kind of like you said earlier. I get excited when a patient cancels now, like last minute, because like, oh shit, I got 10 minutes. I'm gonna go
Yep.
get like 5 notes done. And so it's not so bad, right? So like that's where my life has become with that. But when I get in the flow state with patient communication and treating patients and like just chatting with them. It's the notes that just if I it's everybody's nightmare.
I I agree absolutely 100%. I mean, I think there's got to be and I look at it as the time to do a note,
Yeah.
but that's actually not the time investment. The time investment is that note has to be clinically as competent as I am,
Yeah.
that it has to actually justify what I did. And we did a study in Illinois, and I don't want to put the number out there publicly,
Mhm.
but as far as the percent of chiropractic notes that were compliant, it was I don't even like repeating the number. It was
Yeah.
so hot and so close to 100% that were not compliant with what we build out for.
Mhm.
So there's got to be a better way. I should say that a better way to take a note, to not
Yeah.
sacrifice completeness, to make sure that what we bill for actually is what we did and is documented. And by no means am I inferring that chiropractors don't do those things.
Mhm.
I'm just saying it's not properly documented.
Yeah.
There's no one in healthcare arena that cares more and does more for our patients. The problem is the ability to get that on a piece of paper and submit it for a charge.
Yeah. And that is the tricky part. Let's take a short break for one of our great sponsors, TrackStat. It is a new type of software plugin for your EHR that combines patient communication, marketing, automation, and statistics with patient and employee tracking. Built by chiropractors for chiropractors, it shows your team what to focus on each day. See patient visit habits, missing information, unpaid bills, insurance collection visit average, and more. Great visibility of data so you can focus on filling your office with your best patients. When you can see what your staff and patients are doing or not doing and take action accordingly, your profits naturally grow. Take TrackStat for a test drive in your office with our free trial. Not a techie, no problem, we can help. To get started on your free trial, visit trackstat.org and watch the demo. That is trackstat.org. what are you guys doing to try to work on resolving this issue and really stay ahead of this trend line for chiropractors and what they're looking to do to automate and make their life a lot easier?
Yeah, we're just going to plug everything into OpenAI and have it do all
Hmm.
of our notes for us,
I love
right?
it. Chat GPT it.
Yeah, I mean that's the way to go. You know what's interesting about AI is everyone wants to use AI, and it doesn't work in healthcare like we think it's supposed to work.
Hmm.
That we can use it, and a lot of people are using it really just one aspect of AI, more the machine learning part of it.
Yeah.
But I really believe that chiropractors are going to start to use AI in our daily, in really life problems. I mean,
Yeah.
it works for a lot of things. It's kind of like copper fit. You can use it anywhere. It's going to solve all your problems. Uh, but AI is really developing those systems that's going to help us with problem solving and learning and reasoning
Hmm.
and things that we have to do in our office. But there's one major limitation in healthcare is that the data it pulls from.
Yeah.
So if you were to put, hey, ChatGPT, I have do a note for a soap note for a 60-year-old patient with right-sided rotator cuff syndrome that's had it for 6 months, it will puke out a pretty cool note. It's
Hmm.
wrong, but it's a really cool note. So it does lack the contextual understanding. It doesn't know what information to pull from, and it
Hmm.
also doesn't know how to lead a patient down what information you really need. Um, Specific to our profession, it really lacks the variability in lexicon or language that we use, which is a little bit of a problem. And then I think probably the most important part is that when you look at two different chiropractors, you're not comparing, apples to oranges. You're
Hmm.
comparing, apples to a fruit salad. We all kind of do little something different in the words we use and the techniques that we do. So there's a big issue with AI right now when it comes to soap notes,
Hmm.
but a lot of stuff that we can do, outside of our note. I mean, what kind of stuff do you use AI for right now, just in clinic and also with, you know,
Hmm.
with coaching?
Yeah, we use it internally in our MCM, like our marketing aspect of things. Not a lot, but come up with good subject lines. Get video. We'll take a video and run it through Descript, but then take that with proper prompts, and it's getting better too, which is interesting to see. We keep on monitoring that internally, but it's yeah, we're mostly using it for that right now.
Yeah, we do a lot of social media stuff for our providers, and then
Hmm.
also like MD newsletters, attorney newsletters, and we use a lot of that. But getting the right information and feed it the right scripts and teach it, how we
Yeah.
talk and who the audience is. But for the last 2 years, I have to be honest with you, that's been kind of the heads down focus of myself.
Hmm.
And we put together a thought process, I guess is the right way to say that, on how to get better data. Because
Hmm.
what I think is going to happen, this going back to your initial question, is that data is going to save us or it's going to swallow us up. And there's a lot of people who get kind of queasy about that,
Hmm.
but it is what it is, whether you like it or not. And we have to have some kind of engine to
Hmm.
create our own data. So we started doing intake surveys. In fact, I'll talk a little bit about that, but the intake surveys are designed around creating standardized data.
Hmm.
So how many, if you were to look at 20 chiropractic practices, how many intake forms would they have?
Yeah.
About 20, you
Yeah.
know, and out of that, they're going to have another 700 diagnoses that they gave those patients. So we have to have some kind of way to standardize the collection of data that's coming into a individual provider. So when you see a patient, they should have a standardized form that actually will learn from the prior question. So, like
Hmm.
with ours, there is a body picker. So you pick that, where the pain's coming from. But
Yeah.
everybody does that. That's not fun.
Mm.
Instead, does it start at the spine and then be contiguous down the leg? Well, if it does that, should you ask questions about numbness, pain, tingling, weakness?
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, if you have pain that's going down your leg, should you ask about problems with speech?
Mhm.
No, but if they have neck pain, headaches, and vertigo, that might be a good idea.
Mhm.
So we developed a survey system that has been out 2 years. It's been 1 year out in our clinic and in a beta group that actually learns from the past questions on what to ask next, which
Yeah.
sounds kind of like a lot, but really within about 3 minutes, we've got it down to now we can actually ask automatically the right functional disability index based on your area of complaint. That when you as a provider go to see a patient, you know exactly the OPPQRST. You've already asked the appropriate yellow flags. You've already got the information on disability index, and then there's always qualifying questions. But
Mhm.
now my subjective part of my system is done. That I can have that complete. And then I was like, well, when do I take a note?
Mhm.
You take a note while you're seeing a patient or after you see a patient?
I take the subjective part during, and then I have preceptors, so they kind of do some of the objective while I'm going, and then I afterwards is when I kind of clean things up and sign off on it. Charges, put charges in.
So 95% of the providers that we interviewed did the note after. That's
Yep.
when most people they want the
Yep.
subject. You get to see that, obviously.
Mhm.
However, it's interesting that we have an SOAP process.
Mhm.
However, really, if you have the A, you know what the diagnosis is, you've already gone through your triage system, then
Yep.
really it's SAOP. Because
Mhm.
if your assessment is already done, then you should know based on your patterns of what you do for that specific condition. Meaning, if it's a lumbar
Mhm.
spine disc lesion, that's my primary diagnosis. I do lumbosacral, thoracic, and sacroiliac joint dysfunction, and that's my pattern of how I normally code for it. And then I use these codes for billing. And then also, I should also have the objective findings that
Mhm.
should be positive to substantiate that diagnosis, along with something that I think is kind of neat, the negative diagnoses,
Mhm.
meaning what was it not? Did you rule out the hip? Did you rule these things? So we've done it, and it's
Mhm.
it's out and it's running, and it's something that's, I mean, I'm kind of a geek when it comes to that. But I mean, if you come out with lumbar spine disc lesion, it should already know what muscles you're going to attack. It
Yep.
should already know the orthopedic evaluations, and then the billing pattern and diagnosis pointing. So yeah, that's what we've been working on.
So are you saying that it also helps guide the practitioner on what to ask or do as far as assessments based on that?
Yeah. So that's where the machine learning comes in. So without a
Mhm.
proper data set, then you really don't know what to do. But if I took, last year, I think we put out 900,000 condition reports. So
Mhm.
900,000 patients saw our condition reports. Well, if we could start to identify a pattern of intake, so
Mhm.
this type of patient, this persona, this avatar of patient comes in, age and OPPQRST and problems. And then we said, hey, these providers did this pattern of treatment and they got the
Mhm.
best results. Well, wouldn't you want to see what that is?
Mhm.
Yeah. Don't and I also believe researchers would probably want to see that. So can we open
Mhm.
APIs? Then now our researchers who are doing a phenomenal job, your Schneiders
Mhm.
and your Gertz and your Whedons, I mean, just are killing it for
Yep.
chiropractors. And now create our own data. Then now that we can actually scale the profession because we know
Mhm.
what works and we know that what other chiropractors are doing. Now that humility comes in. Are you
Yeah.
willing to switch? I don't know. I always relate it back to Korean cars. So if you look at a Korean car about 2 years after a German car comes out, they look the same. Like they just mimic the functionality
Yep.
of
Yep.
other cars and want to be like them. And I think chiropractors will do that. I think that if the money's there, I think if the clinical expertise is there, that they'll see that light, and if there's a scalable platform that says, okay, if I get this, I should do this. It makes sense for me. It makes sense for the patient. And obviously, we're
Mhm.
getting great data as a profession. And I do think that we will find a way to bring a lot of our profession together if we can just agree that, hey,
Mhm.
as far as MSK care, as far as non-surgical, non-pharmacological care, manipulation is it
Mhm.
is. Research shows it's the best thing for our patients. But the missing link is sometimes, what manual therapy, what exercise. If we can kind of
Mhm.
make it in one package, scalable product, then we have something to sell.
Yeah, that sounds great. So let me just make sure I get it correct too. So patient comes in, they would, fill out their intake, whether it's at home or in the office. And based on what they start to fill out, it might ask them particular questions. The questions will change based on if they say they have nausea and headaches and all that. It'll ask questions that would help, and then that would go um, into the soap at some point or some entry level there, and then the provider sees it, and then from there it also guides them on what they should start to look for, or follow-up questions, or examinations to do, or
The guidance isn't there yet, but
yeah.
what it does do is that once you have your assessment
Hmm.
with ChiroUP, we already have the evidence-based recommendations for 190 different conditions.
Yep.
So it's going to backfill that with the evidence-based recommendations, and then also have the essentially a rules engine, both for billing
Hmm.
and also for clinical diagnosis. Meaning, if you build out for three sections of manipulation, three regions, you have to have it in your note. We're not going to allow you to
Yep.
bill out for it unless you put it in your note, but it's a click of a button.
Hmm.
Um, and if you're going to make a diagnosis of whiplash or cervical disc lesion, then
Yep.
here you need to at least have a couple of these tests positive to substantiate that as a
Gotcha.
diagnosis. If you're going to continue to see someone, you need to be asking questions. So what's really
Hmm.
cool about the interim surveys is that that's the first visit. That was actually the hardest. However, the subsequent visits don't just ask the same questions over and over again.
Hmm.
It goes back to like the oswestry and goes back to the last question and say, okay, since last time you said you were having pain 50% of the time, is that better or worse?
Hmm.
Your problems of walking more than 10 minutes, has that improved? So now we can show functional improvement with a patient. Even though they may say they're a 5 out of 10 every single visit, we can show other forms of objective, or in this case, subjective
Hmm.
improvement, which is pretty cool. Billing wise, also integrated billing. So when I'm done with my note and I sign off on it, it's sent. Uh,
Yeah.
not not me having to click something. It's automatically sent to the clearinghouse and automatically brought back from the clearinghouse.
Hmm.
And that goes back to that overhead piece that we have to
Yeah.
make sure that we're able to, treat patients and not have to be training staff all the time. I think
Yeah.
staffing is probably our greatest threat to the profession,
Yeah.
because we don't have high margins like we talked about. So we need to find ways to automate those pieces, to make sure that we're, able to stay alive as a profession. But
Yeah.
so here's a question for you.
Hmm.
I told you, and this is not true, I'm just making up a scenario, that
Hmm.
if I told you that for your next patient with plantar fasciitis,
Yeah.
that if you use activator and
Hmm.
you use two specific exercises, a brace that you get from Amazon, and a couple pieces of educational material. And if I told you that was the best treatment plan gets the best results, and you saw how to do it, would you be willing to switch compared to what you're already doing now?
Maybe not with the activator because I don't have one.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. Like if someone said, if you had, radial tunnel syndrome, and
Hmm.
if you sprinkle this pink fairy dust on it, it would get them better. I'd be like, well, I want to buy some pink fairy dust. Now, there's got to be some rationale behind it. I get it.
Yeah.
However, it's going to be interesting on what data does for us, and
Hmm.
if to figure out, if we can match that patient intake to the result, and actually now have one system that can match clinical results,
Hmm.
economical results, meaning how many
Yeah.
times you see them, percent better are they, the coding,
Hmm.
patterns, and to take all that into one system and to figure out, really where do we move forward,
Hmm.
as a profession, with one common thread is that we've got to get rid of this evidence-based versus straight versus nobody cares.
Hmm.
Patients don't care. As long as you're helping patients, that's what I want to see. If you're helping
Hmm.
patients, I want to see what you're doing, and then learn from you and figure out where is the place for that kind of treatment and where is the
Hmm.
place for, more orthopedic diagnosis and treatment. There's a place for everyone.
Yeah.
But without data, we're not going to make any strides in the
Hmm.
future. That's my opinion.
Well, this is exciting. We got an announcement of an EMR coming out, and a lot
Yeah.
of AI and machine learning around that. I'm sure that's been a lot in the making. When can we start seeing this outside of the beta?
Um, so here's the deal. So, as you know, well, maybe you don't know, um, uh, the EMR is the most hated piece of software in every chiropractic office. So it
Yes.
is what it is. And no, the listeners can't hear, but you're smiling. And,
Yes.
and I'm this because I hate my EMR too. And I have a very good one. I actually really like the one that I'm using right now.
Mhm.
However, with that being said, we had no intention of creating an EMR. We started 3 years ago. The cost, the financial cost, the time, the money, the headaches, the ignorance, to be honest with you, of a lot of things that go in an EMR, the amount of consultants we've had, it's I'll say a labor of love, but I'll just say
Mm.
it was more labor than love. This is something that we didn't do because Tim and I wanted to do it. We did it because our providers asked us to do it. They said, "We guys are doing half it. Why not just put it into a note?" Uh,
Yeah.
there's obviously more that goes into it. So we're not going to release it to the general public at the very beginning. And we're
Mhm.
going to do that on purpose. We're only going to let it loose with our subscribers because
Mhm.
they asked for it. So those are the people
Mhm.
we're going to give it to. And it should be here by the end of quarter 2. So it's
Mhm.
already up and running. Everything's already done.
Mhm.
With
Yeah.
that being said, we have always done right over rush, meaning
Mhm.
I could sell this right now, but I'm not confident it's perfect 100% of the time. Now, with any
Mhm.
kind of coding, it's not gonna be perfect 100% of the time, but we need 99.9.
Yeah.
And I'm not releasing anything that doesn't work, perfect
Mhm.
99.9% of the time. And that's where we are right now. We've got 14 clinics using it right now,
Mhm.
and willing out what they like, what they don't like, and making sure that it turns into a system for the profession.
Awesome, man. Well, congratulations. I'm looking forward to giving that a test run. And I know you and I will be in Parker, Vegas together. This will probably drop this episode after that, but we're recording it before it. So let's make sure we connect and chat further. Is there anything I didn't ask that you would like to talk about?
Man, I do have some questions on your coaching group. I know you go
Yep.
through a lot in your podcast, but um, I guess I always look at myself and I'm always curious on people that are anti-coaching
Hmm.
because it doesn't matter if you're coaching on, lifestyle or some kind of
Yeah.
psychological issue or medical issue, but man, I'm curious on why people don't do more coaching for their profession, considering the time and energy and well, even in finances that go
Mhm.
into doing what we do, what are the major obstacles that people would not want to
Yeah.
go through coaching?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely the preconceived notions from the past. They're afraid coaching groups are going to put them in long contracts. They're afraid they're going to put them in a box and say you got to do this way. So some of those things are concerns for sure, and coaching groups shouldn't do that. But then the other one that's out there, honestly, is the money. It's not even that it's that expensive, but they look at a monthly, $749 or $600. We have different programs, whatever it is, um, and they can't afford that, and it's challenging because part of why they can't afford it is because they need help, right?
Yeah.
It's like if they did spend the money, even if it was tight, and they did get the help and they did implement it, then they would easily be able to afford it. And so it's a little bit of a conundrum that they're in is that we often hear like, oh, I can't afford that right now. And it's, well, you've been at this practice for 7 years now. And there's obviously a reason why we can't afford it right now, and we want to get around that in the sense of let's help you afford that. And I always tell a story because and I've made it public back in 2015, 2016 when I switched from in-network provider to out-network in our practice and a few other things. We were really struggling from a cash flow standpoint, and I brought on a financial coach to really help out with that. And it cost $1,500 a month, and it was a 1 year commitment. And I was like, God, I'm losing money every month and I got to spend another 1,500. It was the best $18,000 that year I spent. And I kept doing it after that because it just rewired my brain in the sense of how to understand business and personal finances. And so I had to spend the money to do it, but it was a good investment. And so the long drawn out answer is a big barrier is the initial monthly cost of it and not affording it, but we're trying to get our clients to easily afford it and other things, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I see the same thing. I'm always intrigued. We have a extremely low churn rate, people that
Hmm.
discontinue our service less than 2%, which, what we're proud of, the people like it and use it. But in the same token, that's almost always in December and January when people are
Yeah.
relooking at their finances like,
Yeah.
they start cutting out the seeds for
Mhm.
their fields. And I'm like,
Yeah.
plant more seeds. Don't
Yeah.
cut off your expenses.
Mhm.
Pour some fuel on that. And coaching is one of those things that
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with EO, Entrepreneurs
Mhm.
Organization.
Yep.
I've been a part of that for many years, and getting someone else's perspective on your problems, whether they're in the profession or out of the profession,
Mhm.
uh, it's the value is insurmountable. Learning from people that have already made the stupid mistakes that we've all made, or learning from people that are doing it right or maybe a little bit different, is
Mhm.
invaluable. So I hope at some point I'll get the invite to be a part of your group.
I'd love to have be part of our mastermind group. We got 2 great groups there. I'm probably gonna have you ask you to come speak to one in 2025, but
I got to be a part of it.
alright,
Yeah, I
you're
think
invited. I'll
we're going to have to do that at some point because I look at the people you guys have in your group, and those are the kind of people that everybody should be learning from.
Yeah, it's a great group. It's better than I could have ever imagined, and we're 3 years into it now, and we've had such a return rate, which has been great as far as the people coming back and rejoining. So it's been exciting to see that. So
Good. Well, kudos to you. I've heard nothing but positive things.
thank you. Well, Brandon, I really appreciate your time today. This is awesome. Excited to see how all this goes, and I'll be asking you more questions on that and when it is launched to us because I am a ChiroUP subscriber. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. And until next, oh no, I guess we already saw each other. We already
Yes.
saw each other last week at Parker. So it was good seeing you again.
Yeah, the messed up world of podcasting where you're trying to figure out like, okay, when's this recorded versus released, and when am I seeing you in person? But yes, so it was good seeing you, Brandon.
All right. I'll talk to you later, Kevin.
There we go. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And if you want to make the shift from busy, broke, and broken to time free and cash confident, or you just want to continue with the exponential growth, check us out at modernchiropracticmarketing.com. Look at the MCM Mastery tab, watch the short video on there, and check out what we are doing now for evidence-informed chiropractors. We are equal parts coaching and marketing done for you. Yes, you shoot some videos, we help you with campaign strategies and ideas and really become a thought leader in your community. You shoot those videos, you send them to us, we produce, edit, and brand them to you. Then we distribute them through all of your channels. We also take them and we turn it into one good blog per month. And every other month, we have Darcy Sullivan producing a robust blog with a topic that you pick from her database to help with your SEO. So we essentially become your content marketing agency to make sure your practice is always having ethical, elegant content marketing to help grow your practice. On the coaching side, we also help you with everything from marketing ideas to business, communications, finances, anything practice growth, and really try to help prevent you from being stuck on that island. And we hold you accountable. We have a great group of doctors that are just doing amazing things, and we look forward to help you out to take that next step in your practice. So again, check us out at modernchiropracticmarketing.com and learn more.